Så, från fossilfrihet inom den svenska gjuteriindustrin to the European Green Deal. It's a pleasure for me to introduce on link from Brussels, Andrea Gentili. Are you on link? Oh, behind me. Hello, Andrea.
Yes, I'm on. Yes, I'm in. Good afternoon, Maya. Good afternoon, colleagues.
Very nice to have you. And I'm going to give the title to the audience. You are the Clean Planet Partnership Manager in the Directorate General for Research and Innovation at the European Commission. It's a very short title.
Yes, correct.
So, Andrea, before I hand over the digital floor to you, could you say something about the current situation in Ukraine and how this affects the work that you do in the Green Deal on climate and digitalization? Something short about that.
Yes, for sure. Again, good afternoon to everybody. Of course, my intention is to present you the Green Deal. And the Green Deal is currently the main policy and the main priority for the Commission. However, as you know, the Russian military aggression against Ukraine, which is basically an act of war, undermined the European and global security and stability. So it's basically an attack on the values of freedom, democracy, self-determination, on which basically all types of cultural expressions or academic, scientific freedom and scientific cooperation are based. So last week, my Commissioner Gabriel, on the 3rd of May, and followed by the entire college of the Commissioner, took a specific measure on Horizon Europe in solidarity with the Ukrainian partners. Basically, just quickly, all the cooperations with Russia and Belarus have been suspended. And secondly, all the payments to Russia entities under existing contracts are suspended. Of course, there are some exceptions if there are projects and payments related to human hate in Russia, of course. And third, Ukrainian scientists and researchers, which are key in participating in new framework programs for research and innovation, will be basically supported as much as we can. You know that in October 21, Ukraine signed its agreement to associate both to Horizon Europe and Euratom research and training programs. However, the association agreement will enter into force only once Ukraine notifies the Commission of the completion of the ratification project. However, in the meantime, we have taken all the administrative steps to ensure successful Ukrainian beneficiaries that can receive funding, of course, from the program. Yeah, those are the major, let's say, sanctions. Those activities are part of the sanctions that Europe is taking.
Yes, thank you so much, Andrea. We wanted to just have you comment shortly on this before you start speaking on the topic that you have. So I'm going to hand over to you and your presentation. And I just want to say to the audience here at Metalliska Material, if you have any questions, please raise your hand and we have a microphone. Robert has a microphone. All right, so Andrea, the digital floor is yours.
Yes, thank you. So the European Green Deal, as I mentioned, for the moment is still our main policy driver in the Commission. I will be presenting the European Green Deal as such. You have to know that the European Green Deal was adopted by the Commission at the beginning of this college, so in December 19, just before the COVID crisis started, and has been followed by several initiatives that I will mention during my short intervention. I will have just a bit more than 10 slides. And the slides will cover not only the European Green Deal, but other policy initiatives, and in particular, what the research and innovation can do in terms of helping industry in this transformation, which is the European Green Deal. All right, so let's kick off. When you think about the European Green Deal, sometimes people have the impression that it's a lot of green, so the focus is on greening, and a bit less on competitiveness, a bit less on other aspects. So the European Green Deal is not only a green, but also a deal. And a deal is done between parties. Who are those parties? The parties are the public side, the private side, and the citizens. So it's important to remind that the European Green Deal is a proposal to transform the total European economy for a sustainable future, which is not only sustainable from the point of view of the environment, but also the point of view of the citizens overall, the quality of life of the citizens, and in terms of competitiveness. So here you can see another element which sometimes is forgotten, which is the fact that the European Green Deal will try to leave no one behind. There is a special attention of activities under the Just Transition Mechanism, which are trying to make sure that not the poor regions, like, for example, the regions which are very much depending on coal, during the phase out of coal, which is in a way a strategy which has been already adopted, will not suffer more than what they can bear. So if you look on the left, the main principle of the European Green Deal is to design a set of transformative policies. So let's have a look at those. What are those transformative policies? Those transformative policies covers many areas. So if you can look, you can see from the top is the climate law, so the area of environment, but in relation to the climate change, which is indeed probably the most popular. But there is also an area in relation to a sustainable and smart transport, the area in relation of a greener industry, so tackling in particular energy-intensive industries, and why not steel. I will mention some particularities in relation to steel in the end of my presentation. And then eliminating pollution. Pollution, this is tackling environment, but from a wider perspective with respect to climate change. Pollution, for example, NOx, SOx, pollution like noise, which do not have, this type of pollution does not have an impact on climate change, but have an impact on the quality of life of the people. And then, of course, the energy aspects, protecting nature on the left, from farm to fork, and all the others. Now, what are the main three that I would like to focus our attention on today? But first, the climate action, which is probably, as I said, the most popular area of the Green Deal. In the climate law, we have set specific targets in relation to the greenhouse gases emission by 2030, minus 55%, and by 2050, where we talk about climate neutrality. It's the first time ever that the Commission took a commitment well beyond their political mandate. So the Commission college that are in force, that is in force at the moment, is ending its mandate in 25. And for the first time, the Commission made a long-term commitment well beyond, as I said, the 2030 and 2050. In July 2020, well in the middle of the COVID crisis, basically, the Commission adopted the Fit for 55 package. What it is, the European Green Deal set the objectives. And with the Fit for 55 package, the Commission wanted to review all the existing legislative and add the new legislative proposal in making sure that the existing legislative initiatives and proposals could be adapted with respect to the new policy guideline of in terms of climate law. In this package, you may have heard there is, for example, the ETS, the emission trading schemes. Aviation, for example, is an area. Waterborne was included. And there are, of course, other initiatives in relation to the climate adaptation in such a way that we can prepare for potential impacts of climate change and make the EU climate resilient. So the second area that I would like to cover is the energy, and this is particularly actual at the moment. I will mention something soon. So the clean energy transition. We need to decarbonize the energy system in EU. For your information, material productions, energy productions are together with agriculture the main areas of emission, greenhouse gases emissions. So energy is important to be decarbonized. The major strategy on the energy system integration, hydrogen, methane, offshore renewable energy, and European Battery Alliance. Those are strategies which are helping the energy sector to be decarbonized. Now, the targets are clear. 40% of share for renewable energy is foreseen before 2030, and an additional 36-39% is expecting in terms of energy efficiency improvements. Why now energy is important? As you know, I mean, the war in Ukraine, apart from the geopolitical threats it poses, will have and is having already a long-term impact on global energy supply. So following the invasion of Ukraine, the case for a rapid clean energy transition has never been stronger and clearer. And on the 8th of March, just a few days ago, the Commission has published a communication, which is called the Repower EU, on affordable, secure, and sustainable energy. The Commission will there propose a joint action plan to make Europe independent from Russian fossil fuels well before the 2030 that is expected in the European Green Deal, which was, as you know, adopted 2 years ago, when no one could expect what we are now facing at the moment. Of course, with this new strategy, we can expect a renewed focus on deploying renewable energy, bioenergy, and hydrogen. Well, why not? As well as on energy efficiency. And for the steel sector, we can expect an impact on the price and the availability of the hydrogen in the future. The third areas that I would like to cover here is the already mentioned the energy intensive industry and the concept of circular economy and built environment. The Commission, just 6 months after, in the middle of the COVID crisis in May 2020, adopted the updated industrial strategy. The updated industrial strategy aims to help all types of industry towards the twin green and digital transition in order to have a globally sustainable, competitive, and resilient EU. A specific, in this context, a specific staff working document on clean steel was attached to this document. The Circular Economy Action Plan was adopted in March, still 2020, and aims, of course, at changing the ways we use, we consume the products, and we produce the products across the entire product life cycle. Many areas are covered: electronics, ICT, plastic, food, and packaging, and waste. And then other specific initiatives in the field of construction. You know that, and with a specific focus on cities. 70% of the greenhouse gases emissions are produced in cities where 70% of the people live in the planet. So special attention to this European Bauhaus, just to make sure that we conceive correctly the cities of the future. Okay, having said this, just a few hints on this carbon leakage, the famous carbon border adjustment mechanism. It's clear that from the moment the Commission, Europe sets those high standards in terms of reducing of greenhouse gases emission, as I mentioned before, by 2030, and the full neutrality, carbon neutrality by 2050, we basically raise the risk, the famous risk of carbon leakage. So raising the risk that someone else outside Europe, of course, can pollute, basically. So there is a risk of emissions shift outside Europe. And of course, being fully interconnected within the different regions in the world, we need to avoid that. And this is the purpose of the carbon border adjustment mechanism, which is a system to make sure that we have a fair price on carbon emitting during the production, and encouraging, of course, cleaner industries in non-EU non-EU countries. It's interesting to notice that iron and steel are covered by the CBAM, is called in Commission languages. Of course, in order to cover all those different initiatives and objectives, we need the finance, we need investments. The major source of investments, is the multi-annual financial framework, which was adopted in 2021, covering 7 years, and the Next Generation EU, which is providing 1.8 trillion, of which 30% will have to go to climate actions. The Recovery and Resilience Facility as well, and of course 37% of this is fully devoted in grants and loan for climate investments and reforms. And since July last year, different countries are basically making use of these recovery and resilience facilities. Now, 2 slides only on the role of research and innovation. Research and innovation has a key role, and that's been recognized all over the different GEG services in order to, let's say, stimulate and support and engage all of us in relation to the European Green Deal. Research and innovation is a policy opportunity, and whenever the Commission tries to come up with new initiatives, we try to make sure that the principle of innovation principle is respected. What it is, this principle? Is a principle that any new initiative cannot create impediments or barriers or problems to industry, to make sure that all the necessary resources are invested in the direction of the policy objectives. So what do we have in terms of funding schemes in the context of Europe? Well, Horizon Europe is the main instrument, and 35% of this Horizon Europe funding is for climate solutions. There is a new RFCS program as well, which had since summer last year has a new legal package, which is also supported the twin transition of the steel industry in particular, and why not also the coal industry, but the steel industry. We have the Green Deal missions, and the 4 Green Deal missions are on climate adaptation, ocean, cities, and soil. And the Commission has established in the context of Horizon Europe 49 different European partnerships with industry and member states. And just to mention one, the Clean Steel Partnership is one among them, which, by the way, has the peculiar characteristic that it is receiving funds from 2 different sources: the Horizon Europe Cluster 4 and RFCS. We have the European Institute of Innovation and Technologies to support the young researchers and innovators, the Innovation Council for SMEs in particular, and the innovation funds in support to the deployment, so high TRL of decarbonization technology in the EU industry, in areas such as chemical, iron, steel, cement, hydrogen, solar, and etc. My last slide before I conclude on 2, let's say, important elements which are open at the moment. The conference covers, this conference covers materials in general, but I think it's important to raise the attention of all of you on specific aspects related to steel. And in the context of steel, we have still some topics open in Europe Horizon Cluster 4 called 22, which are the ones that you can see there on top, on raw material preparation for clean steel production and modular and hybrid heating technologies. And then the RFCS calls in 22, which are one on the big ticket. For the first time ever, the steel community has a budget which is probably 5 times bigger than what they used to be having in the past. So make profit on those opportunities, and there will be the standard RFCS annual call in June. In conclusion, apart from this, I tried to provide you some overall helicopter view on Europe policy. I just would like to mention one important policy element which is coming from the Versailles Declaration of just a few days ago, and where our European leaders, you might have read in the press, addressed the new geopolitical threats and connected defense, energy, and economy. So amongst others issues, they agreed that we need to equip ourselves for the challenges we face in order to better protect our citizens. Therefore, they decided to bolster investment in defense capabilities and innovative technologies in such a way to foster synergies between civilian defense and space research and innovation. And in particular, invest in critical and emerging technologies for security and defense. I think that it's important in this context to remind that raw materials, in particular critical raw materials, are to be secured, in particular in terms of their supply. And among the critical material, iron is indeed one of them. That's the end of my intervention. I give the floor back to you, Maya.
Thank you so much, Andrea, and thank you for this presentation. So I have a few questions, but if there's anyone in the audience, please raise your hand and Robert will give you a microphone. But I have a few questions. So, Andrea, if I may start, could you elaborate on and say something about how the partnerships in Horizon Europe work?
I mentioned that there are 49 partnerships in Horizon Europe, and I have the title myself to be the manager of 11 of them, the ones which are in the context of transport, energy, and directly linked with the climate change. So I would say that there are two categories, public-private partnership and public-public partnership. The public-public partnership are partnership between the Commission and the member states. In a way, the member states decide, few member states, not all, decide to put some money in some particular initiatives. For example, the digital urban transition is one of them, or the energy transition. And together with the Commission, they put a sort of money, a pot of money, and to support specific topics in this area. The public-private partnership are partnership with the private side. And let's make an example of the Clean Steel Partnership. There is no point that the Commission top-down or the public side top-down could impose any reduction of, for example, greenhouse gases emission, why not CO2 emission to the steel sector if the private side is not ready to do that. So what is important is to agree with the private side what it is something realistically that they can do, to agree upon, of course, a medium and long-term strategy. The public side cannot intervene at the level of the short strategy with the different actors and stakeholders in the field of steel, but also in the field of aviation. But we can agree on targets at the level of the mid and long-term targets. Why not? To fulfill the 2030. When the strategy is being done, and the strategy for all the partnership of the public-private partnership has been already established in the context of what we call SRIA, Scientific and Research Innovation Agenda, we need to simply implement it through specific topics which could help in the research work program, could help industry to develop the building blocks which will be used to create the first demonstrators, and those demonstrators in the direction of carbon dioxide reduction, for example, or digitalization and so on. So it's a renewed, let's say, pact between the public, which is normally represented by the Commission only, and the private side, which is represented by the industry in this specific sector, but not only the industry, the research centers and academia, all the ones which could help industry in this transformation.
Thank you, Andrea. And actually, we have run out of time. So if you have any questions, then you actually have to email Andrea. All right. Thank you, Andrea. I have to say thank you to you. I've told the audience here in Swedish that instead of a gift to all the speakers, we will give money to UNHCR. I don't have that. I don't have that.
What sort of Red Cross, whatever
Yes.
it is. Yeah.
So that's what. Good. So that's what we'll give to you instead of a gift. And a warm welcome and an applaud to you, Andrea, and thanks for joining us at the conference.